The disciples came to Jesus and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." Jesus answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." Simplicity in humility. She kneels before Jesus. "Lord, help me." She is a foreigner. She is a pagan. She is frustrating or irritating the disciples. She must be making some kind of a scene, and she just won't let up. And it's help me this and help me that, and on and on and on. And they're saying, "Jesus, get rid of her. Jesus, send her away. Jesus, she's causing a problem. She's causing a disturbance. Shut her up." Even Jesus says, "I have come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Again, in humility, kneeling before him. "Help me. Lord, help me. Even the dogs get to eat the crumbs. Jesus, I don't even need the good stuff. Anything. 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 Help me. Your daughter's healed." 1,000 years ago, the King of England was also the King of Denmark, was also the King of Norway. King Canute was a bad dude. With huge swaths of Europe under his command. King Canute was maybe one of the most powerful men in the world. And as a feudal king, his subjects owed him complete allegiance. Now, if you know anything at all about King Canute, you probably know his one famous story. And if it's legendary, or if it's apocryphal, or whatever, if you know the name Canute, you know that he commanded his subjects to carry him over to the seashore. And there, being carried in his throne with his regal finery and a kingly crown and robes, and he tells his subjects to put him there on the water's edge. And as the waves start to come forward, Canute, King of the Danes, King of the Norwegians, King of all England, says, "Waves, you shall now cease." And the waves did not get the memo. And whoosh. And there, in all of his regal finery, Canute is soaked. And he's a mess. Seawater and sand. King of all that he surveys, but he cannot stop a single wave. But before you find Canute a fool, Canute turns to his subjects and he says, "Now you all ought to understand that the power of kings is vain and trivial, and that there is no one worthy of the name king except he by whose command heaven and earth and even the sea bow and obey." Starts off sounding like he's an idiot, right? Except this is an object lesson that the most powerful man is still in need of the Lord and ought to be humbled before him. The lowliest foreigner suffering and pain, the most powerful earthly king. Each of us and all those whom we need. In need of humility, in need of God's grace, in need of God's mercy. this moment that we hear from Matthew's gospel, the woman who is a foreigner, probably a pagan, yet she knows that Jesus can help, and she refuses to stop. She refuses to give up. She refuses to quit or go away or shut up. Lord, please help me. Lord, please help me. Lord, please help me. Kneeling before him. And this moment is preserved even within our liturgy. We don't tend to get to it except during Lent when we pull out the old Rite One language. But this very moment of humility is preserved within the prayer for humble access. Within the course of the service, we have asked that the Lord bless these gifts, that this bread and this wine might be body and might be blood. But before we take Jesus himself inside of us to nourish and strengthen us, these words, at least in the old version, appear. We do not presume to come to this thy table, O merciful Lord. No. Trusting in our own righteousness, but of thy manifold and great mercies. We are not so much worthy as to gather up the crumbs under thy table, but thou art the same Lord, whose property is always to have mercy. It reminds us that we do not approach the table of the Lord or his flesh and blood because we are so great, because we are so powerful, because we are so good, because we have it all figured out, because everything is working well. But each of us, from the greatest of earthly kings to the lowliest of people, come before the Lord in humility. Lord, I need you. I need your mercy. I need your love. Some have sought to dismiss Christianity as a mere crutch. If that is the case, I would rather stumble forward with the crutch in hand, leaning as heavily upon it as I can, than be flat on my face with no hope and nowhere to go. For I have yet to meet or even hear of the person that does not at some point, if not right now, need that help desperately and fully and completely. You couldn't open a newspaper, watch a news program, or even sign on to Facebook without being reminded this week that even those who look like they have it all, on the inside may be crying out desperately for help. Worldly success, fame, fortune, like King Canute of old, master of all that he surveys, and yet, somewhere, somehow, maybe deep on the inside, or maybe not even that deep, hurting, alone, afraid, broken, or in pain. I had seen several people post similar sorts of pictures, but on the cover of your bulletin, I tried to find something that would try to capture that sense of abject loneliness, though surrounded by a crowd. And my guess is there are times where most of us might feel that way. You could be in the middle of a crowded room and yet some way, somehow, somewhere deep inside, feeling very, very alone. Like the disciples who meet this woman, to them, she's a nuisance. She's a troublemaker. She's causing a scene. Jesus, get her out of here. And Jesus sees a woman who understands in humility her need for God's grace, her desire for his mercy. And it is true, we don't know, just to look at one another or those people who the Lord brings into our lives, what they are struggling with, how they might suffer. Whether they seem poor and lowly, or whether they seem like they've got it all together and they have nothing that they could lack. Well, sure, things are kind of hard for me, but if I had the money of so-and-so, then that everything would be great. Well, yeah, I'm kind of sad right now, but if I had that kind of job, or if I had that kind of station in life, or if I was rich and famous like that, or if I was powerful like that, or if I could do this, or if I could do that, except it's not true. From the most powerful to the most poor. Even that worldly success, so fragile, so delicate, it cannot and it will not last. To simply project ourselves onto others to say, well, either they have it all put together or they have nothing going on at all, is to presume that we understand even that which we don't like to admit about ourselves. We need the Lord. We need His mercy. We need His grace. Sometimes I feel like I'm pretty good at my job. Sometimes I'm working out. And sometimes I feel like everything I touch becomes a mess. Sometimes I feel like I can't do any of it. Those who seem like they've got it all put together, I suggest to you that either they don't, or there will come a moment where they won't. For it is outside of our power and control to make things happen without fail, just the way we want it, just when we want it, just how we want it. Well, I so decree that the waves shall stand, except down you go. Things are pretty good right now. Okay, but what happens when not? You can't make it okay. You can't make yourself always be great. Always to have it together with no one getting hurt and no one getting sick and no one being sad and there being no trouble, no worry, no anxiety, no concern. It can and it will and it does happen again and again and again to the best and the brightest, the poorest and most lowly. For we are all in need of God's grace. We are all in need of His mercy. That is His property. That is His nature. That is His character. He loves you to be merciful. And that person who bugs the heck out of you, He loves them to be merciful. And that person who looks like they have it all together, He loves them to be merciful. And that person who looks like they couldn't get it put together if they had super glue in both hands, God loves them. We show that kindness to one another and to those who He puts in our lives because we just don't know. We just don't know. The ones who look like they don't need it, they do. The ones who look like they need it, they might need it from us the most. To be kind and merciful to them as the Lord is kind and merciful to us. To think of celebrities and all of their wealth, and all of their influence and all their success. On. Think of our kids getting ready to start out a new school year and hoping that everything goes okay and hoping that they make new friends and that nobody's mean to them and the teachers are all good and helpful and hoping they remember to do their assignments and just wanting everything to be just right and knowing that all of these things reside outside of our control, reside outside of our power, and sometimes completely outside of our influence. I need you. I need you to be merciful. Lord, help me. Lord, help them. And those folks that you meet, maybe especially the ones that are causing a scene, especially those ones who are frustrating you or annoying you or just won't shut up. And maybe those are the folks who are not only crying out for the mercy of God, but maybe for your mercy as well. For mine too. This is going to be hard to do. But I'd like whoever has the clicker to advance one slide. If you can see it. This is one of my favorite hymns. And at a time where we ought to be reminded of our need for humility and our constant need for the grace of God. A need that comes day by day and moment by moment, whether we would admit it or not. I think this is a way to remember both the wisdom of Canute and the humility of the Canaanite woman. That on our own bended knees bent within our hearts, we might call out, Lord, help me. Abide with me as falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, Lord, abide with me. Oh, now I cross before my closing eyes, shine through the gloom and point me to the skies. Heaven's morning breaks and earth's faint shadows flee. In life, in death, O Lord, abide with me. Ask for God's help. In faith,